Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Wenson, Assistant Director of TTC, and I'm going to talk about all of the facets of the gradebook. I'm sure people will still have a few questions, so we'll have some time to talk about any particular things. I know gradebook is something that kind of everybody's is a little different. Everybody's got different ideas of grading, so I will jump right into it. So here's just a demo course. Obviously, you've got your gradebook tab up here. You can see, and I think we mentioned it in one of the earlier webinars, if you have anything kind of for your attention, it will show up in this right in here. So if you have a message waiting for you, you'd have a little number next to it. In this case, I have an item to grade. There also occasionally is an exclamation point, and that is, so that'll sometimes show as like needs grading or basically just trying to grab your attention, telling you there's something in here for you to do. So let me pop in here. You can see it went right to the grades tab on this. That is by design. So it's basically the last thing that I was in, the last tab that I was in here, it will go back to. So you don't always have to click back. If this is the one you like, it will stay there. But I will kind of just look at the other ones in here. So overview, that's where your like needs grading section is. So if you like that terminology of like, here's all of my items that have been submitted and need grading, then you can kind of come here and grab stuff. Then there's the gradable items. Oh, actually, I should mention needs posting. So that is something that was new in Ultra, is after you grade an item, you may still have to post that item so the students can see it. I believe the idea was, okay, I'm going to grade all these papers on my own time, and then when I'm done grading, that's when I go and post everything, rather than, these couple of students saw their grade on Tuesday, then I finished up my grading on Thursday, and the rest of the students saw it then. So it's kind of just keeping everything together. But actually, that just reminded me, that's what the exclamation point is stands for, is there are grades in there that have not been posted. So if you see an exclamation point up here, that might be the reason that that's happening. Okay, so let's pop over to gradable items. So this is a list view of that sort of spreadsheet view that I started on. And this is also the place where you can move things around. So my example here is, maybe I've got homework, then midterm, maybe I want midterm somewhere else. So I can just grab this little up and down arrow on the right and move that. Sometimes that's a little tricky, especially if you are on a laptop with like a touchy screen. Sometimes it can be a little tricky to do that, but you'll see that purple box kind of move of where it's going to be. Okay. And this is similar to what the student view will be. So they'll see it like this, and they'll see, obviously, their grade will be here rather than some of these options. Okay. And we can go to grade. So that's the one that I typically stay in. It's very similar to what the old version of Blackboard had. So that sort of spreadsheet view that you may be used to. And we've got the scroll bars on the bottom and on the right for you to move along. Because of the size of my screen and the small number of students, I don't have the one on the right, just because I don't have any more students after Muhammad here. Okay. And then the last tab is students, and that just gives you kind of a quick view of how are they doing, when was the last time they accessed the course. So I don't anticipate that would be one that people use that much, but if you want to just, okay, I want to see based on last access who's been coming into this class, you can do that here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to spend most of the session in this page. Okay, so I've already got an overall grade on, but if you had not set one up, you would have a section over here with kind of a purple button that said, I believe it says set up overall grade. So if you didn't have one already created, it does prompt you, similar to when you come into a blank course, and it has that add content button. So since I've already done it, it's already here for me to edit. And then a lot of these are things that just got created as I was working on the course. So if you've built your course out and you've got assignments and discussions, quizzes, anything like that, there will already be a lot of stuff in this gradebook. You can create your own columns in here too, and I'll show that in a second. I just want to say, if you've already built the site, you should see items in here unless you're expecting to collect all your assignments offline. Okay, so let's hop in. I'll talk about some of these. I guess I can talk about those right now. So there is a search function. So if you have a very long gradebook, you can search for things here. So if I do, it'll find that column for me. There's also a filter. I wanted to show this because I know some of our folks use a combined class, a merged class. So if I click this filter, and I just added a child node to this course. So if you're teaching 5 sections of a class and they're all connected, I can say I only want to see that group of students, especially at the end of the semester. This can be very useful because you need to go in and actually give them their final grade. So if I apply that, now it's only going to show you the students in that particular class. And you've got clear the filter up here, or I can come back and turn that filter off to kind of get back the whole view. Because this was one, I basically added a course to this site. I wasn't able to break it down by the other group of students, but if you had multiple classes connected to a parent site, you can kind of switch between. Yeah. So we do have a lot of folks that do that. So I wanted to show that because especially at grading time, that's important. And then the next tool here is, so when a student submits a paper, they get a submission receipt. And if something happened and they said, hey, you gave me a 0, but I submitted this, and here's the email that Blackboard sent me, we can basically search to see where that submission went, because they would have gotten a code that said, yes, I did submit this. And students get an email with that. So if there's ever any question, they should have received an email with a submission receipt if you wanted to check on that. And then the next 2 buttons here are downloading and uploading. Download is probably, it's very useful for a couple of reasons. So I can just click that and it'll give me a few options. So I can download this gradebook into Excel. And that might be, you might just be more comfortable creating calculations in Excel. You might just want a copy of your gradebook at the end of the semester for your records. So there's a lot of reasons. I think I spoke to somebody the other day that they just wanted to print out a roster for their in-person class so they could kind of, check people off. And this is one way to do that, because this will just create an Excel file that you could print. Because basically, yeah, there's no kind of good way to print this gradebook from Blackboard. So if you are looking to print out any grade records, this would be the way to do it, is to download into Excel. And then, yeah, your options here are full gradebook. Grade history, unless you absolutely need that, I would say keep that unchecked, because that will keep any changes. So it'll have a lot more information in it than maybe you need. And then you can, choose if you didn't want to have certain columns. If it's everything, you can just select all. But if you wanted to uncheck one of them, maybe attendance or something, you can do that. And then the last piece is just what type of file. So Excel will open either one of those, but usually I just leave the default to XLS. Okay. And then the last piece, if you're not familiar with this terminology, so my device would be my computer. Content collection would be inside of your Blackboard. So you could access this from Blackboard rather than save it to your computer. So if you wanted to save that for some reason to your content collection, you could do that. Okay. And then so there is also the upload option. If you, for whatever reason, like to enter your grades in Excel, you can download. So I could download this gradebook, put all my content in, or all my grades in, and then upload it back. Just the only thing to keep in mind with that is you want to keep all those headers the same, so it will understand, like, there's some codes that are involved that Blackboard can say, okay, this is homework 1 and it's this. So when you download it, just don't change any of the headers. So you would just enter the grades and then upload it back. I don't think too many people are doing that, but that is an option if you're more comfortable. All right, so now I'm going to get into all of the settings. So there's a bunch of things in here in this little gear. And if we click that, the first one is grade schemas. And that is helpful if you are curious, if you like to grade by letter and you want to know what Blackboard interprets each letter as, we can click that. And this is the default here. So hopefully it matches up pretty similar to what you think. If you don't use these particular numbers, you can change it. So you can either change here, I can just edit. Say, okay, for my class, I want it to be only 95 and above, maybe as an A. And you can see as soon as I did that, that A minus changed. So it will try to keep everything the same. Okay. So I just like to show that to people just so they know, because if you enter a letter grade, you may not know what Blackboard is actually interpreting that as. Okay. And I believe, yeah, if you were to grade by letter, it still actually wants you to put the number in. So you have to know kind of an A is a 98 for me, and then it'll display that A for you. All right. The next piece is maybe a little less about the gradebook, but kind of like an early warning system, or it can flag students that maybe are falling behind. It's not a super powerful tool, but it is built in if you're interested in kind of having just a flag of, you have three options here. So if their overall grade drops below a certain number, if they've missed a few due dates, or if they have not accessed the course in a certain number of days. So we can look at any of those by clicking this view course activity. And you'll see, okay, here's, because I just created this course, everybody's missed the due date. And then nobody has accessed the course yet because it was just created. So that one's not being flagged, but you can see here's a little flag. If I wanted to message Kenzie about that, I can check her off, and this will go right into the messages tool. And I can say, hey, you missed that last assignment, and however you want to follow up with that. There's also, you can sort of look at it on a graph. This isn't a great example of that because we don't have any information in this course, but if you want to see sort of overall student activity in their grades in here. Okay, so still in that gear. Based on that course activity, you can also send notifications to students in that activity stream that Stacy showed earlier. So yeah, if they haven't accessed the course in 7 days, it'll pop up and just kind of give them a little notification that they should probably log into my online class. Here's the automatic zeros thing that Melissa was just talking about. So I have it turned on right now in this course, and I only put one due date in. I do want to just kind of show you what it looks like if you were to turn it off. So you might need to turn it off this semester, or if you don't want it. And like Stacy said, after this semester, it will default to off. So if it is a tool you like, then you just have to come to this page and turn it back on. But if we check this off, I just want to show you, here is your options if you turn it off. So I can say, I want to turn it off, but I want to keep it for just that one assignment that they were showing for. I can keep that, or I can clear them out. And then same thing, if I turn them back on, it'll put them back for anything that had a 0. Okay. And here is one place. I'm going to show this in a second, so I'm not going to get into it now, but here is a place where you can get into change the overall grade, but you can also edit it from this view. So I'll show that in a second. Student visibility doesn't impact us too much, but if you, for whatever reason, had to remove a student from your course rather than having the registrar do it, you can check this off and it would basically hide them from your view. Like I said, so if we do it, the proper way where they drop the course or they've been dropped by the census, they will get removed from your course automatically. The account gets disabled, so it will hide them from the gradebook. But yeah, if there was any reason that you wanted to just hide a student, maybe my preview user, if I just didn't want it to show up, I can make that invisible in the gradebook. Okay, this is, I believe, a new feature, item management. Doesn't have as many features as I would like to see, but I will show it to you at least. So if we click Manage Gradebook Items, you can basically change like the visibility on multiple items at once. I would prefer to see like changing category, maybe moving things around in a bulk way. But yeah, it's really just giving me the option to hide stuff from the instructor. So, for an example of something, you might have a homework due in the external publishers, and maybe all you care about is seeing a addition column of everything rather than each 45 different columns in there that are clogging up your gradebook. You could hide those and still have the items kind of add up into that calculation if you wanted. Okay. So yeah, I'd like to see them work on this a little bit because there's other things I would like to see as if under the item management umbrella, I guess. But it's there now, so hopefully they add a few more features for us. Okay. And next piece is categories. So I do recommend doing categories before you do anything with the overall grade. So if you have a custom category, it's important to get things into those before you go and try to set up like weights for your grades. So if you look here, all of these that have their own icon are the default categories. So those are ones that are already there. This one with kind of a blank page is one I added. So that's a custom category. So I can add another, maybe call it anything, whatever. And as soon as I click off of that, that is saved in there. And then you'll see, you can tell the custom ones, based on the icon, and also because they have this option here where I can delete things. Okay. So once you're happy with all of these, then you can go and assign all of your items a category. By default, so if I add a journal, it'll put it in the journal category. Add a discussion, it'll put it in the discussion category, assignment, etc. The one difficult thing is quiz, exam, test. So you're going to probably have to go, if you create a bunch of those, it's going to put them all in, I believe, the test category. So you have to go in and say, okay, this one's an exam, this one's a quiz. That way you can separate the weights out in the overall grade. Okay. So this is the place where you can get to see all of your rubrics in your class. So if you've assigned rubrics to assignments, I know Melissa kind of already covered that, so I'm not going to go too far into the the actual generation of them. But if you needed to kind of look at one without scrolling through and finding the assignment, you can get to the rubrics here. So I can just click, this was a kind of the auto-generated one. And once you get in there, you can edit any of these criteria or what constitutes a certain grade, percentage, and all that. So yeah, that's just the place where you can kind of see them all. And then this was another tool that probably most people won't need. This was the example I came up with of why you might want to do this. So an overall grade notation is just something outside of your normal grade schema. So my thought was, incomplete would be something that wouldn't fit to ABCD. So I created that, but probably you're not going to need much to do with that. And I can just show you what that, so I set this as sort of the code for it. And then if you basically, you can pick that. If you were to edit the overall grade, you can pick any of those grade notations that you chose. So if you had other ones, you could have a list here that you could say, okay, these students are getting this, and etc. I'm going to click off that because I'm not ready to do that yet. All right. So before I go to the overall grade, let's look into changing a category. So anytime you want to edit one of these, you're going to click the icon. So if I click the name, it just changes the sorting. So if I don't have any grades in there, but it would sort by highest to lowest, lowest to highest. That's all clicking the name. So if you want to edit, we have to actually click the icon itself. Okay, and you get a few options. Delete is only going to show up if it is something that is in the gradebook but not tied to an assignment. So I should, let's see. Oh, actually, yeah, it lets me delete it regardless. I thought a test wouldn't let me. Yeah. All right. So, all right, let me get into editing here. So this was one that I created. This was a column just created in the gradebook. So rather than have a link to another item in the class, this was one that I just set up in the gradebook, and I'll show you that in a second. So that's already assigned to the homework category, but if I wanted to change that, maybe that's a in-class worksheet, I can change that here. You can change points. If you wanted to have a due date on it, you can do that here. Let me just put one in so I can show you changing it. Okay, so if I didn't save that, I can go back and edit it. If I wanted to then remove the due date, you basically just highlight it and delete. There's no like remove due date. So if you ever need to get rid of them, you just kind of delete the text in there. Okay, actually, let me stick that back to homework. So if I now have a third homework I want to add, I'm just going to hover over in between any of these. So if I wanted to add it after homework 3, I just hover there and you'll see that little purple plus sign that you should be used to from adding content. Click that and they give you a few options. So if it is an item that I'm putting grades into, we want this first option. You do have the option to do a calculation. So let me show adding an item first, and I'll show a calculation. Okay, so give me homework 4. Again, everything is hidden by default. Okay, if I want to get rid of the due date, check that off. And assign it to the category. You don't necessarily need to add the description. If you want to, you can put that in there. That'll show up in the gradebook, but I usually leave that blank because any descriptions would already be on the item or on the syllabus. Okay. So then maybe I want to show a total for the homework. So I can click that and then do, there's 2 types of calculations. So a total calculation will be similar to overall grade, where I'm just saying like add things up. So for this, let's say I'm gonna only do the homework category. I can do that here. And I'm just turning off all these other things. So there's another way to do this too, but I'll show it this way for now. And the only other piece here is maybe I want to be a nice guy and drop their lowest homework grade. So I can click that edit calculation rules on that category and then maybe drop the lowest. Okay, and I want to show this as percentage. Okay. So that's one way to do a calculation for a category. The other way, I'll do it right next to it. Oh, and I forgot to make that one available. You can also build out a calculation if you're inclined to do so. So I can say, let's do the same thing. So I want to do a total. And then I've got, so I basically add that function. I'm going to total it up. And then I need to pick, I can either pick a category, I can pick the items themselves. So since all those homeworks are in the same category, I can just do it that way. The caveat with this is I cannot drop a grade doing this. Or if you can, it's a more complicated calculation than I'm prepared to show. So yeah, if you just want to show, okay, here, you had 20 homeworks and you just want to show them to the students, here's your average or here's your total for all those homeworks, you can do that very easily here. So this is kind of, it can be very powerful, and you can do a lot of customization in here. It's just, getting it to work exactly the way you want it to can be tricky. There's a button up here to validate, just to make sure your formula works. I can click that. Okay, it's valid expression. So that was a pretty basic one. But you might have a good example is the attendance column tends to always be worth 100 points. And sometimes people want that added to their overall grade as 10 points. We might do a calculation like, let me see if that's a variable. And I don't know if I have attendance on here, but I'll pick another one. So if I want to just, oh, there's attendance. Okay. So attendance, and then you can just say, where's value? Okay. So it's basic enough to make sense to do it. So if this was 100 points and I want it to be worth 10, I can just divide by 10. Obviously, you can get a lot more complicated than that, but this does give us the option to create those calculations that may be the reason you like to use Excel rather than Blackboard for your grading. I'll save that. Okay. And I will say this sometimes is confusing where after you save it, it does not go back. You have to actually click out this little window that pops out. So if you ever kind of don't know why you haven't gotten out of there, you can do that. All right, average 10%. Okay. Okay, and you can see because those are calculations, it's showing kind of a different view because I can't enter a grade in there. It's only going to be based on other things. So if I give 100, you'll see that one will start. It only did it after I submitted the second because I'm dropping a grade there.
When you are trying to set up your categories and you want to make sure all of your items are in the correct categories, if you click on the gradable items tab,
Right. Yep.
You can sort by the category and then you can look at everything that way. And I find that's a better, well, not better, but an easy visual. So you make sure that all the assignments should be where they are. And then you can actually edit it from here, from the ellipses on the right as well.
Okay. Yep. On the, right here.
Yeah, it's just a nice, if you're trying to set it up and you want to make sure everything's in the right category, rather than having to go into every single item to confirm, this is a good visual place to see it.
Yep. And this does not affect this view. So we're basically just looking at it in this order. So when you go back to grades, it'll be in the same view that it was previously. All right. Let's hop into overall grade. Okay, so I'll click that and edit. Like I said, you might have that purple icon over here that says set up overall grade if you have not done it yet, but this one I'd already created. So, okay. Right at the top, you have a couple of options. So if you have a course that is set to basically add up to a certain number of points, you can click that points total up here. And then within here, you can see here are all of your categories and it lists how many items are within each category as well. Okay, one part that can be frustrating is it will show you categories that you're not using. For points, that's not a big deal, but for weighted, it becomes a problem because it tries to weight those categories and you just have to just turn them off. So you see here, if say I didn't want to use attendance, I can just click this little omission, no, whatever button you want to call this. If I click that, it will zero that out, and that is no longer being added at the bottom. So yeah, if you want to check if your points are adding up correctly, you can always scroll down to the bottom here to see what it's adding up to. Okay, so that is points. If I wanted to see what's in the homework category, I can just click that little caret and open it up and look. So because I'm not using the calculation that I created, it's using all 400 points here. If I want to change that, I can actually do that same thing here. So I can edit calculation rules and say drop the lowest. And now that point total, I believe, should drop, hopefully. Nope. So it won't show up until it actually has dropped the scores as far as like the total points. But this is that one place to do that as well. So you don't need to create those calculations. If you don't need to see homework total, you can do that score drop right here. The other tool inside there is use only. So I can say only use the highest score in this category or lowest score in this category, if for whatever reason you wanted to do that. Okay, and if I want to turn it off, I can just come in here and click disable again. Oops. Yeah, it does want you to save before you close out. Just basic other things before I move to the weighted is this checkbox. So that's on by default. That is only going to calculate grades based on what's been graded, basically. So if you would turn this off, then anything that you haven't graded yet is being treated as a 0 for students. So usually we recommend keeping that on because it shows a better idea of how they're doing in the course right now, rather than what they've earned out of the total possible of the class. Okay, and then the other one here is how you want the grade to display. So letter, percentage points, complete. And then right below that is whether the students see this overall grade. Usually we recommend leaving that on too. Depending on how they're accessing Blackboard, this overall grade will show on their kind of like, here is your grade for the class. So usually we recommend leaving that. Okay. Let me pop over to weighted. And actually, I'll show advanced. Advanced is that same calculation. So if you wanted to get real technical and create all the calculation by hand, you could do that in here. So I'm not going to really show that. I just wanted to show that that is an option. All right, and then weighted. So I say, probably most of us are doing weighted, and a lower percentage is doing points, I think. But here is what that looks like. And this has kind of taken everything and weighted it, not necessarily equally. So this top section, this is one feature that I'm hoping they maybe give us another option here. So right now you can do proportionally or equally. So what equally will do is say, okay, within homework, there's 4 items. It's worth, let me change it. I'll say 10 points. So each of those 4 items is 2.5% of the total grade. So if those items were worth a different amount of points, so they were all worth 100, so it doesn't really work for this. But if I do proportionally and one of those homeworks was worth 10 and another one was worth 100, then it would say, okay, this 100-point homework is worth 10 times the value of the 10-point homework. The problem that we've had is sometimes you might want that on one category, but not all of the categories. And right now it's either on or off. So sometimes you might have to do some more advanced calculations if you only want that proportional to account for homework or a certain category. So I'm hoping they add that to this little section here. Maybe you could make these proportional rather than the whole grade book. So I'm just going to go back to equal because that gives us that extra view here. So because I've already gone in here, a lot of these are locked. So you'll see the lock icon. If I need to change anything, I I can just click and edit all these. So yeah, even though these are items that do not have anything in them, it's still counting those. So sometimes you have to just come in and say, okay, that's not going to be used. That's not going to be used. Okay. And okay, so now it basically took the rest of everything and tried to weight it equally. Because these were locked, it didn't change that. So let's say reputation 10. So as soon as I start adding, it always wants to be 100 at the bottom. So whatever I change, if these are unlocked, it will change everything else based on that too. So maybe test 20. So here's a good example. I have a test and exam. So yeah, it's just keeping which ones are which in clear in your mind. Okay, and then once those are locked, those will not change. So the rest of them will kind of fall in. Okay, so this is an item, an assignment that is unlinked. So if I had something that I wanted to be just, by itself, there was maybe, I had right now I think midterm is here. So it could be in a category, or I could click this little button and say midterms by itself. And I don't want to use the exam category anymore. Maybe the midterm is 20. Oops, didn't like that. There we go. Okay, if I decide, okay, now I actually want to go put that back, I can click that icon to link it back to. So this one is an assignment. Okay. There's a lot of information in here, but yeah, what it's trying to do is get you to 100%. And when you make a change, it's going to keep the rest of them making it to be 100. Okay. All right, so let me save this. And again, we just have to come up and close it out. Okay, so right now this quiz is kind of being counted a lot more, I think, than these homeworks. I should mention just visually on this, because I have a due date on this and it has passed, it changes this to red. And you're always able to kind of, like I said, to change a due date, because that was a test that was generated. Instead of opening that window like it did before, it actually brings me all the way out to the test, like editing the test originally looks like. And you can click there and remove that due date if you want. Tests and assignments actually have this little checkbox, whereas a grade column would not have that. So you would just delete it, but you can just check that off, and then that would remove the due date. Yeah, why don't I take that out and we'll just see the change here. Okay. You'll see that because I got rid of that 0, now that grade went up to 100, because it is only calculating things that are already graded. Okay, so it did stay red. All right, so I did want to, I know Melissa did show kind of grading, but I did want to just show kind of how it looks from here. So we've got new submission will show up when a paper has been submitted. This one I believe had a rubric on it too. Okay, and this is one that was not I didn't submit a paper. It was just something that was text. So you do not get the annotate tools if a student types in. So if you're looking to comment on a paper and mark it up, you would have them always make sure they're submitting a document to you rather than just a piece of text. Okay. I have a couple of tools here. So this little caret, if things are kind of closed off, you can open that up. There's my rubric, and then there's my feedback tool. One thing that I would like to mention is you can leave audio feedback. It should work here. Let's see, just because I am also recording. Okay. So yeah, if you prefer to, leave a little bit of audio rather than type something out, you can do that here. And it'll be linked right inside that feedback for the student. You can have video or not. So it's one tool. You basically are either going to do both or just audio. Okay. And it does give you a chance, if you mess up, it doesn't like automatically get sent to the student. You're able to edit that and get rid of it if it didn't come out as you expected. Okay. Yep, there's the rubric. So like Melissa said earlier, if you have a rubric assigned, you want to grade using it. Just otherwise it will show up sometimes as they still have something to grade. If you just grade it up here rather, it would show up as an override. So you just want to make sure you're using the rubric. Okay. And yeah, let me give a little bit of feedback here, and we'll show it from the student view. Okay, so let me pop into student preview. Oops, I didn't actually grade that student, so let me add the grade too. And you can see because I had this open before, it came back open like that. So Blackboard does try to keep your choices in mind when you kind of jump back and forth between things. Okay. All right, so that is graded. Okay. And you can see here, sometimes there's not a great visual indicator, but this grade has not been posted yet. So if you come down to gradable items, you'll see this button, and that is not present. So that's now I'm getting that exclamation point. So you can post from this view, or we can go into that gradable items view. Sometimes if you have a lot of stuff that maybe hasn't been posted, this is the best place to go, because if there were 7 things in here, rather than go through and post one at a time, I can just say post them all. Okay, so now that I've posted, let's go into the student preview so we can actually see some of those grades. Okay, so their view looks a lot like ours as far as the gradebook, but when we click into it, so here's my current grade, my total, and then here are the grades that I've earned. So it actually bumped the stuff that's actually been graded up to the top, even though it wasn't in that order. So that's helpful. Of stuff like that has not been graded yet will kind of get popped down. And then if there is any feedback on a grade, students will get this little purple icon, and that'll open up the item. Because this was something with a rubric, they actually can see the rubric as well. So you kind of, okay, I missed criteria 2 was the place that I kind of lost some points on, and then whatever feedback they were given. So that is where students are viewing your feedback. If they have any questions about how to get to it, it should be pretty clear when they go to the gradebook that it's there. Okay. And then yeah, clicking this, because this was an item that was only in the gradebook, then this is where they're only going to see that grade. Okay. And I do recommend, if you kind of have questions, maybe while this week while you're working on your gradebook, trying to see if everything works correctly, to pop into the student preview, and then rather than discard when you leave, you can save that, because you can always do testing like we've kind of shown today. Say, okay, if this person gets these kind of grades, what is everything adding up the way I think it should? That's a very useful tool to kind of check things and make sure everything's working correctly. Let's see.
Tim, I had a question.
Sure.
If you click on the overview tab up top on the left,
Oh, yeah.
does that also let you post? Oh, you already posted
Yeah.
everything, but I
Let me,
wasn't sure if you could do
yeah, let me
all of the
throw in a
things at
couple.
once from there.
Yeah, I can throw in a couple more. And so yeah, that's a good place.
Okay, thanks.
As far as, yeah, here's everything that needs grading and here's everything that needs posting. Yeah, that is probably one of the frequent things we see is I've graded everything. Why are my students seeing it? So you want to, pop into this every once in a while just to make sure you've actually shown the students the grades that you've submitted.